Okay, here's the premise. It's 1850, and there's a girl named Angel. She is by far the most popular prostitute in the little town of Paradise, California. She is a rock star. Everyone knows her name. There are men crowding the street every day to be with her. So many men, in fact, that the Duchess, the proprietor of the brothel at Paradise, has instituted a lottery system to give every man a chance of some time with Angel. Angel is not exactly thrilled with her success, and she sees very little of the profits. Enter Michael Hosea, a virtuous Christian farmer who drops by Paradise to sell some of his crops and to find a wife. You see, this is a Christian film, and he's prayed to God to send him a woman. And just by coincidence, he becomes convinced that God wants him to marry the hottest hooker this side of the Rockies. If you've seen my video on the Passion of the Christ, you'll know that while I grew up in a Christian household, I haven't been a believer for some time. So why, you might ask, do I bother watching Christian films? Well, a few reasons come to mind. For one, they are uniquely bizarre. Like fantasy or sci-fi, they exist in their own supernatural world. A place where people follow magic rules on lost stone tablets and worship undead kings. Another reason is most of these movies are self-serious and overly sentimental.
My babies. They're killing my babies.
I don't understand.
Yes, that is a nice way of saying that I watch them because they're funny. Also, Christian films tend to be made for a conservative audience.
We're going to prove once and for all that God is dead.
And in a sort of masochistic way, I enjoy watching movies that offend my political sensibilities. Gets my hackles up in a perversely enjoyable way. So I went into Redeeming Love expecting to get some stupid, patriarchal, sexist bullshit that would be fun to laugh at or argue with. And that's all there, to be sure. But what I didn't expect was to find a movie that was so eminently entertaining. Chock full of sex and violence and the full spectrum of human depravity. It's a schlocky grindhouse B-movie wrapped up in semi-respectable Christian romance clothing, and I love it for it. Redeeming Love is a Christian film, but it's sold as an earnest romance film first and foremost. There's no mention of God or faith in the trailers, outside of a quick shot of a Bible on a table and someone wearing a cross. In every interview with the cast I watched, religion is barely mentioned if it comes up at all. Only interviews with author and screenwriter Francine Rivers dip into that well, and her interviews are clearly geared toward a more religious audience. The film wants to have its cake and eat it too. Market to both a secular and religious audience. Unfortunately, looking at the middling box office returns, it seems like the film might have been too secular for the religious audience and too religious for the secular audience. Before we get into things, let me throw out a quick disclaimer. Redeeming Love is inherently very conservative in its politics. While the film softens the evangelical edges a bit, it is still sexist, anti-abortion, anti-sex work, and just generally very traditional in its views. It isn't those elements that I find so entertaining. It's those elements juxtaposed with incest, lynchings, and sex lotteries that make this film so endearing to me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Suffice to say, I'd understand if you don't want to support a film that has such objectionable attitudes. But I do think that this movie is significantly better than every other Christian movie I've ever seen. And I, for one, would like to see more just like it. Anyway, let's get into what makes this movie so good.
Have we ever met before? You look like someone I used to know.
Could be.
So Angel and her mother May live out in the countryside with their servant Cleo in the mid-1800s. May is the mistress of a wealthy Bostonian who is unhappy that she got pregnant with Angel.
I sent you to a doctor to get rid of that mess.
You son of a bitch.
And refuses to acknowledge her as his daughter. Soon, Angel's father kicks her and May out of their home, and May turns to sex work, plying her trade on the city docks. She soon contracts an illness and passes away, leaving Angel no one to take care of her, except, that is, for one of May's regular Johns, who decides to make a little money by selling Angel to the Duke, a wealthy Irish pimp with a predilection for little girls. And just in case you didn't realize the Duke was evil yet, he forces Angel to watch this man as he is strangled and stabbed to death. Not, of course, because this man is a child sex trafficker, but because he drank his whiskey without asking.
You'll drink when I pour you a drink.
And so Angel is inducted into the world of child prostitution. The film, understandably, does not dwell long on this, and soon time passes. Years later, a particular man visits the brothel. Angel's father. It's unclear whether or not this man recognizes his daughter, but they end up going to bed anyway, and upon realizing what he's done, he takes his pistol and blows his fucking brains out. It was at this point that I knew that I would love this movie. Angel decides that now might be the right time for a change of scenery. So she escapes from the Duke's brothel and catches a boat to San Francisco. Why San Francisco? I have no idea. But maybe it was to capitalize on all of the lonely men streaming into California, because it's the gold rush, baby. 1849, thousands of men descend upon the Golden State to make their fortune, panning rivers and streams for that sweet, sweet gold dust. Angel begrudgingly continues her work in the oldest profession on the journey to San Francisco, and it is a long journey, and ends up earning a tidy sum upon her arrival, but she is immediately mugged by the two other young ladies aboard the ship. Rough stuff. Our miserable teenage protagonist somehow wanders to the gold rush town of Paradise and is soon employed at the local brothel known as the Palace, run by the Duchess, no relation to the Duke. Soon, Angel becomes the most popular girl at the palace, literally the most famous woman in town. Seems like every single man wants some time with Angel. So many that the Duchess institutes a lottery that men can enter just for the chance to be with her.
Show me a ticket!
One more charmed man! She's done shagging for the day! She's all worn out!
Anyway, enter Michael Hosea, a lonely local farmer who prays to God for a wife.
Lord, I was hoping that maybe you might give me provide me with someone I can share this with.
Michael heads into town and glimpses Angel walking down the street and becomes convinced that this is the woman that God intends him to be with.
That's Angel. Finest girl west of the Rockies.
Even after finding out that she's in the sex trade. So Michael buys a half hour of Angel's time to introduce himself. Of course, when he enters, she's naked, making our little Christian farmer blush, and, one assumes, scandalizing any conservative audience members. Michael, in so many words, pops the question, and it goes over as well as you might expect a surprise proposal from a man you've never met would go.
Time's up.
God, I could go on and on like this, but let me try to just hit the highlights for you. And God, there are a lot of highlights. Angel asks the Duchess for the money she's owed.
I want my gold, Duchess.
And the Duchess has her beaten half to death by her henchmen. Michael buys Angel from the Duchess and marries her while she's unconscious, naturally. Angel isn't thrilled about being married and carted 20 miles away to some farm, but she's grateful to Michael for taking care of her while she was healing.
I'm gonna work off my debt, and then I'm going back to get what's mine.
She wants to pay him back, but Michael refuses to sleep with his new wife until it means something to her.
Please don't.
But it only takes one sunset and a farming montage before Michael is ready to consummate their relationship. And Lord, I can just imagine the conservative Christian audience walking out right now. Michael's gold miner brother-in-law Paul comes by and recognizes Angel from the brothel. He is flabbergasted that Michael would marry such a woman, but Michael makes it clear that he doesn't care about Angel's past. He cares about the future, about starting a family with Angel. This is when we get a flashback to Angel's abortion, where the Duke says,
Dr. Smith's gonna take care of the problem, so it never happens again.
Feeling guilty about her infertility, she decides it's best to leave Michael, so she hitches a ride with Paul back to paradise. On the journey, Paul demands payment for the ride.
But I have always wondered what it might be like to make it inside Angel's inner sanctum.
Angel agrees, but I think we can all agree that she was giving less than enthusiastic consent. Back in paradise, we discover that the palace is burned down, and Duchess has left town, but Angel finds a new pimp and sets up shop at another hotel. Michael quickly finds out where she is and takes her out of there by force, fighting his way through pimps and johns. Look at that ball punch! Back at the farm, Angel, disgusted with herself, jumps into the creek and begins to scrub her skin with rocks. This is what I'm talking about. Crazy shit happens every 5 minutes. Anyway, a new family buys some land nearby, and Angel meets their oldest daughter, the virtuous young Miriam, who Angel decides is perfect for Michael. This is the woman, girl, who should be his wife. After having one last steamy sunset session of carnal Christian copulation, Angel drops off her wedding ring with Miriam and catches a ride to San Francisco with a traveling bucket salesman, naturally. But guess who else is in San Francisco?
It's been a long, long time.
Angel's old friend, the Duke. He burns down the cafe where Angel is working, then carts her off to his new San Franciscan brothel. From her room, she can hear the screams of the little girls Duke keeps in his personal quarters, and she falls to the ground in tears. But our Angel hasn't given up. She's brought on stage to entertain the Duke's guests and prays to God to help her.
God, I want to believe.
God doesn't show up, but guess who does? Mama, from beyond the grave.
Tell them the truth, darling.
This spectral vision gives Angel the courage to risk the Duke's wrath and reveal his deepest, darkest secret.
Duke fancies little girls. He has 2 locked away upstairs right now.
This revelation shocks the crowd.
There are little girls in here!
And this one guy in particular.
Lies!
Duke grabs Angel from the stage and prepares to stab her with his sweet cane sword. But this random guy comes to the rescue. I swear to God, this is the first time he's been introduced to the story. Anyway, Angel rescues Duke's little girls and runs away from the brothel as the mob chases the Duke through the streets and strings him up, hanging him from a nearby window. Brutal. 3 years pass. Angel is working at a charitable organization helping former sex workers. Paul shows up, hat in hand, saying that he's been looking for Angel. He wants to bring her back to the farm because Michael, in fact, didn't marry Miriam, that random 16-year-old girl, and he's still waiting for her to return home. And despite working in what I'm sure is a very fulfilling career, Angel leaves it all behind to reunite with her husband. Oh, and God fixed her womb so they can have kids, which is convenient. Happy endings abound, blah, blah, blah. So all in all, a great, cheesy movie. Violent, sexy, melodramatic Christian schlock. My kind of movie, but admittedly I have unique tastes. Is this a good film? Well, yeah. Unless you define good as achieving an intended goal, then perhaps not. Considering the film was being made in earnest, and they probably wouldn't want me laughing nearly as much as they did. But if you define good as entertaining, absolutely. This is a good film. Let's look a little at how the film was received by the public at large. The box office take was fairly weak, but not too much lower than the average wide-release Christian film. The critics, the measly 26 that reviewed the movie, the critics panned it pretty universally. But man, look at that audience score. That really surprises me because when you look up what people are saying online, especially in the Christian sphere, there's little to no positive response. So let's get into the Christian condemnation. Most of the reactions online about Redeeming Love are from people who haven't even seen the movie or even read the book. If you look up Redeeming Love on YouTube, this woman, Alyssa Childers, she has the most popular video response to the film, and she's fairly typical of the Christian reactions I've seen. Incidentally, I'm not very familiar with her content, but Jesus, her video titles are a nightmare. She seems obsessed with combating so-called progressive Christianity, which is ironic considering that progressive Christians are the only ones who seem like they're actually spreading the message of Jesus Christ, rather than the hatred and bigotry of most Christians in the public eye. But I digress.
Now, everyone seems to be talking about this right now. My social media news feeds are flooded with reviews.
Alyssa here says that she will not be seeing Redeeming Love because it changes the message of the story of Hosea. That the book of Hosea is about man's continual infidelity towards God, not about, capital H, his redemptive love. But it's not like that different, right? I mean, Redeeming Love is inspired by the book of Hosea. It's not, a straight-up retelling. It's such a stupid thing to take issue with.
This is a story that should drive us to our knees in repentance. It should drive us into our knees in thankfulness and worship to God for his unfathomable mercy to us. We deserve death. We deserve hell, yet he rescues us.
This really creeps me out. I would have become an atheist a lot quicker if people talk like this at my church.
So this is an important metaphor for God all throughout Scripture, is that, yes, he loves us and there's redeeming love, but that comes through the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross.
Yes, and Michael, despite having the surname Hosea, is representative of Christ's love in the film. He is a vehicle for God. Why can't these people just chill out?
You're watching a movie where there's this long, drawn-out story of love, redemption. There's sexual tension under the whole thing, and then it culminates into a lengthy and perfectly curated scene with perfect lights and music. And I just want to ask you, is that going to cause you to fall on your face before God?
No, you weirdo. Yes, it might turn some people on. And they might go home and have sex with their husbands and wives after they see it. Is that such a bad thing?
What's enticing you that you want to see this movie? Now listen, this is not about being a fuddy-duddy about sex, okay?
Could have fooled me. On the flip side, kind of, we have Paul and Morgan's reaction. I'm a little bit more familiar with Paul and Morgan's content, and they tend to have fairly bad takes. Like, for example, their criticism of Turning Red.
There is this scene towards the end of the movie, and pull up the picture, Morgan, it's this picture, where her mother turns into a panda, and she's going to her mom in complete rebellion, completely saying, I am now accepting who I am, and she starts twerking. She's in her panda form, but she's twerking in front of her mom, she slaps her butt, and I'm just like, this
so disrespectful. And
is hard to watch.
Yeah.
But their video on Redeeming Love was pretty good. Well, not good, but at least they actually saw the movie.
We doing a movie reaction up in here.
Or at least Morgan did.
Yeah.
Morgan, some of you guys might just get angry right off the bat. Morgan went and saw this movie last night. Here's an interesting comment. Michaela Huffman said, while we talk about whether or not it is necessary or acceptable to include this content from a viewing standpoint, my thoughts are, what about the actors being asked to portray those scenes? And I just want to say, I think that's a great point. Mm-hmm. I don't like that. Mm-hmm. I don't like the thought that there are actors, and to my knowledge, I sure hope that they're not actually having sex. I don't believe they are.
Not normally.
They aren't having sex, Paul.
After hearing your take on it, after doing some research on my own, you're going to have to use your discernment, but I think there is a place to watch and appreciate this film. If I were to watch it, I would make sure to be looking away.
Well, I'll take whatever I can get. So is Redeeming Love really a Christian movie? So I actually read the novel in preparation for this video, and it wasn't a bad read. The film is a pretty close adaptation of the novel, which makes sense since the screenplay was written by the original author, Francine Rivers, who addresses the sensuality of the film in her personal blog. I've been made aware of the distress some Christian viewers of the Redeeming Love movie have over the love scenes, and I want to address those concerns. Every scene in the movie is there for a purpose. There is nothing gratuitous in any scene. Director DJ Caruso and I were very careful and mindful of what is presented. I find this very funny. What a world. What a world that people would give a shit. Oh my God, what hell. Okay, anyway. Speaking of Francine Rivers, if anyone is doubting her bona fides, there is no question that she is a Christian, and one that no conservative could possibly take issue with. Look at her recent anti-abortion screed here, titled Open Season on Human Beings. Rough stuff. But she's also a capitalist. She knows that sex sells, and I think totally reasonably, doesn't think there's anything wrong with sex. Within the bounds of marriage, of course. Redeeming Love is, famously, Francine Rivers' first novel after becoming a born-again Christian, and it was originally published by Bantam for the mainstream market. Years later, with the book out of print, Rivers found a Christian book publisher and created a new, quote-unquote, redeemed version of the novel to sell on the Christian book market. I would kill to get my hands on the original, but it's going for over $150 on eBay. So I'm stuck with my redeemed copy, which has become the standard edition, and the only one available in print since its release in 1997. But I've done a little research on the differences between the redeemed and unredeemed versions of the novel, and in many ways, they're quite slight. The major difference is that she made the sex scenes in the novel less descriptive and took out all swearing. But also, most notably, she added a scene at the end of the novel where Angel goes to a church and converts to Christianity. But it's interesting to note that the film version seems to be based on the unredeemed novel, since the movie has fairly explicit sex scenes, swearing,
You son of a bitch.
and absolutely no conversion scene. This makes sense, because this isn't some straight-to-Christian streaming service bullshit, no siree. While certainly still retaining its Christian heart, this movie was definitely trying to appeal to a mainstream audience, just like the unredeemed version of the novel. Honestly, I could see how that would rub Christians the wrong way, but no one seems to be talking about it. The film is actually even less redeemed than the original novel, because God's voice is completely taken out of the film, and he was all over that book.
Do my will, beloved. I drew you up from the desolate pit, out of the miry bog, and set your feet upon a rock. Go back for Angel.
But you get the point, right? There's zero God in the film. Unless you count, any change in the weather, which characters in the film seem to take as some great and profound communication from God. So is it a Christian film? Yeah, of course it is. It's just not boring, sexless, incompetent, or any of the other adjectives you usually associate with Christian films. And if I were a Christian, I would be infinitely more interested in having this film represent my industry rather than whatever the hell all these movies are.